Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Archie Tech Experience. Today, we have with us Mr. Harrison Wilkinson, who is an intern at the State Capitol building. How you doing today, Mr. Wilkinson?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Why don't we start by you telling us what is an average day like at the State Capitol?
For me, that includes helping people out with their basic needs for communicating their messaging. So that could be helping them record video of their member or helping them print out posters that convey messaging on the House floor that you've probably seen, and just overall helping them out in terms of connecting them to other offices and things of that nature.
And so you work for the House, the Republican Party?
Yes. There's
a big divide in the Republican Party, according to the mainstream media, which is really the only form of media that I watch. Does that reflect inside the State Capitol at all?
I'm gonna go with 50-50. The things that you see on TV are just the things that they want you to see, right? So that they are there. They're not, they're not blown out of proportion. They are there. But at the same time, I think that we're willing to work together more than what's shown. And so at the same time, that's why I said 50-50, that they are willing to work together, but they also have differences. With the speaker vote, I don't know if you remember, but there was about 20 or so members who were keeping McCarthy from speaking from being speaker because they didn't want, or they wanted certain things to come out of his speakership. And they ended up getting those things in the long run, but I think that caused a little bit of the outsider view to think that we're a little bit more schism than we are, but we're not.
So one thing that I can see, and I don't need the media to tell me this, is as a country, we're divided right now. And I'm wondering, how does that translate into the State Capitol? Like, do politicians reflect the voters as far as things that we seem like we can't agree on, like abortion rights and gun laws and things of that nature, like things that split the country in half? Is there any agenda with any of the politicians in the State Capitol to kind of resolve these issues in a way that could bring the country closer together?
So the schism that you see is more created by like the corporate media. So like when you hear the words thrown on like fascist or communist or things of that nature, they're typically not true. If you want to, let's take the two extremes, for example, like Ilhan Omar on one side and Marjorie Taylor Greene on the other side. Those are each one person on either side, and that's it, right? So like, I think that when people see that, they see the whole side as Marjorie Taylor Greene, or they see the whole side as Ilhan Omar, but we're actually a lot closer than people think we are, especially when you get up here. When your office is located across like 2 feet from each other and it's random, right? So you could be one Republican surrounded by Democrats or have it be stacked, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. You have to be a lot nicer to people. And I think that kind of just shows that like we are willing to work together. It's just these few key issues that we don't. And so what they do is they'll take those key issues like abortion or guns and blow it out of proportion and say that, well, they don't like this, so now we can't have all of these things. And like, well, that's just not true. I could name 3 things off the top of my head right now that we all need to work on. It's Medicare, Social Security, and our military, right? Those are all bipartisan issues that we could get work on, but they don't want to because those other 2 issues that we talked about earlier.
Which side, and don't be biased, which side is more like won't give, won't take? Like, which side is more, I don't want to work with the other side?
I don't want to say it's a one side. I want to say it's people. What you'll see a lot of the times is that it's not one side or the other, that it's a specific person. So what they'll do is they'll have, I'll just keep coming back to them, right? So if MTG started a bill on, I want to refund Social Security, let's get Social Security back up, you'd have people like Ilhan Omar saying, no, I don't want to vote for that bill, specifically because that her name's on it. right? It might be good for the country. It might be all these things. But she won't vote on it because it's got Marjorie Taylor Greene's name on it, and vice versa, right? Ilhan Omar could say the wildest thing, like she wants to fund the border, even though she doesn't, right? And Marjorie Taylor Greene would be like, no, not voting on it, not happening.
Just because it has the other side's name.
Because it's got
it has Omar's name on it.
100%. And so it's not really, I wouldn't say a side, I would just say people. You'll get members on either side saying, I know, I don't want to do this just because of whatever reason.
But though, Marjorie Taylor Greene does kind of have a heavy following, right? Like she's got a group of people that listens to her, and she's got a large social media following, fairly large. And she says things like, I think one time she said Jewish people are shooting satellites down with lasers or something like that.
It was, she said that if there was global warming, it would be Jewish space lasers or something like that. She's
something to that nature. It's just something just out of this world, like just insane. So when you have someone like that in the Republican Party saying these things and supporting that the election was rigged, the election was a hoax, and supporting all these outlandish things, how do you kind of how do you work with that?
Well, I guess you don't, right? That's why she, held up the speaker vote for so long. Or she walked into Media Row the other day with a white balloon, saying like, why aren't we shooting down the balloon? She's kind of eccentric in that way. But the thing with that is like, so is Ilhan Omar, you know what I mean? Like nobody's walking around with white, nobody's as eccentric as Marjorie Taylor Greene is. But it's just the same thing with Ilhan Omar. Like, how could you work with Ilhan Omar when she's voting for X, Y, Z? And I would just say that you have to put something in the bill that their constituents agree on. So like, there's a reason why these people keep getting voted in, like Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, and whether or not you think they're doing their job, obviously their constituents think so. And so if you, right? Well, I mean, that's a lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people don't think, well, why do these people get voted in? Well, what does Mitch McConnell bring to the state of Kentucky? A lot of things, right? He's doing them a lot of favors. Why does Nancy Pelosi keep getting voted into San Francisco? That one I couldn't tell you. I'm from California, and I still couldn't tell you why those people vote for her. Even those people hate her. So, like, it really just depends. And what you have to kind of do is just kind of make it sweeten the deal for their constituents. So, like, for Marjorie Taylor Greene to vote on a bill that she would generally disagree with, it would have to be like, well, Georgia 14 gets XYZ money or something like that. And that's usually how that goes down.
I want to kind of pivot a little bit to African-American outreach and why you guys don't do any. Because it would seem like some missed opportunities by the Republican Party to kind of reach out to the Black community and get more supporters. Statistically, there isn't a lot of African-Americans in the Republican Party. Do you hear anything in the state capitol about plans to reach out to get more? And if so, like, what kind of things do you guys plan on doing?
So for the Republican Party, it's tough for that, for the reason that our thing is we want to leave you guys alone. And so like, it's tough when you guys need things and our platform is, no, we want to take everything away from everybody, right? Not just Black folk, right? We want to, what is the word? Roll back welfare, roll back Social Security, or we just had that whole fight about Social Security over that whole thing. But not everybody wants to do that, or just roll back social programs that would help everybody. But you guys, typically need it the most. The plan would be to like leave you guys alone in your own thing to kind of figure it out, right? And so that's kind of because that's the Republican motto, right? Like lift you up by your bootstraps, do all these things. But in terms of the way that the federal government's been handling it, Trump recently did opportunity zones. Are you aware of what those are?
I'm not.
So those were areas in America that needed investment, like money investments. And so he made it easier to invest in those areas by giving people tax breaks for doing so, like inner cities and all those things. The problem is, and this is a tough issue to talk about, The problem is, why aren't those areas being invested in currently? Why aren't those businesses going there? Now, there are a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to go through those reasons, but you have to make them more investable. And there are a lot of things that would go towards that. But one thing that I do like that he did was those opportunity zones. The other thing that I like a lot is doing school outreach. I think, and we had this discussion before. I'm a big fan of changing the way that we do schools. I do not want to end the Department of Education like some Republicans would like to do, because that's not how you beat China, and it's very Republican of me to want to beat China. And I think that's where you're going to want to start with your outreach. That's how I would do it. I would say, hey, we need to make this education better for everybody. I know that Arizona has a terrible public school system. I know that for a fact. I lived and worked there for a very long time. I have some very close people that live there, and I know that system very well. Kids slip through the cracks all of the time. And this isn't like a Black issue. That's an everybody issue. Education is an everybody issue. And so I'm a big fan of, if you fix one thing for everybody, the whole thing is going to go up. Like, you ever heard of a rising tide lifts all boats?
I hold that same perspective. Yeah.
Right. And for me, it's not the Black outreach needs to happen. It's that outreach needs to happen, period. For me, it's a lot of people that don't understand what a Republican will bring, because for me, it's, you see a lot of quarrels with police, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get the police out of it. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's I need the government out of my house, right? For me, that's a Republican thing. That's a libertarian Republican thing. Stop the government, get them out of my lives, right? Same thing with the Black community. I think that you guys,
But though, can you see how let's leave them alone and let them figure it out for themselves may be the wrong approach? Because, and I understand where you're coming from, less government. I agree to that to an extent. I like a lot of libertarian values, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a separate thing when you say it like that. Like, we're still Americans, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just cut us out of the deal and then expect us to figure out everything on our own when we have the most traumatic experiences in America out of any, not only minority group, but any nationality in the country. So we're gonna need that support to kind of get back on equal ground with everyone else.
So unfortunately, we couldn't give it to just you. Does that make sense?
I understand that.
I'm saying you, the general.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, like, it wouldn't go to just you, it would go to everybody. And so for that's a lot of money that we could spend on other things, right? So I'm sure that you're a big universal healthcare guy.
I am. So, huge,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So that money could go to that, or, in your case, or in my case, that money could go to X, Y, Z or something, you know what I mean?
Well, what about like a kind of like an affirmative action kind of law, or popular topic, reparations? Give us our just due. You know what I'm saying?
So reparations is tough on a philosophical level, because that is me paying you for something that you didn't experience and something that I didn't do. And unfortunately, like, it's just been way too long for somebody like me to be accountable for something that happened that far away. Does that make sense?
I know I do. I'll say this. I understand where you're coming from, but though there are a lot of generational trauma that still affect people today. You know what I'm saying?
Well, of course, right. So that's not right.
It's like I wasn't exactly a slave, but I feel like I'm still affected by slavery, if that makes sense.
Let me try and frame this for you. So the idea is that not that you're affected, because I would say that every Black American was affected by slavery. I think that's a fair and true statement to say. What I wouldn't say is that every white American owes you, because like a lot of us didn't own slaves, right? So, like, for instance, my grandfather on my mom's side is Mexican,
mm-hmm.
right? So, like, that guy wasn't here for that, right?
Mhm.
So like, and my grandmother was raised in Arkansas, a dirt poor, didn't have shoes, lived in a trailer. You know, I didn't, so I don't have any generational wealth that came from slavery, right? Because a lot of people that you see that have that generational wealth, it actually came from slavery. So like, they don't want to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and that's totally cool, right? So I think for me, it would require a lot of, okay, this group of people owes that group of people because of that, and like leave some other people out of it. Does that make sense? I think that's the most.
That does make sense, but I would answer that with, and I gotta close here because I want to move along. It's a time
Yeah.
limit thing. I would answer that with, not every taxpayer uses public transportation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I get it, but you guys didn't cause it, but everyone can chip in and help a little bit. Moving on, though, I really want to talk about it. It would be a good time now, especially after what just happened in Michigan State, to talk about gun laws. Why are Republicans so against gun laws? And it seems like I would expect every time there's a mass shooting, you see a lot of people calling for change. A lot of the population wants comprehensive gun laws put in place, and we just don't see that happening. And mostly there's a push from the Republican Party.
Okay. So like, let me ask you a question. So what do you think would be a comprehensive
I'm
gun?
asking the questions here.
Well, no, well, I'm asking,
no.
no, I know. Yeah. I only asked that question because in terms of comprehensive gun laws, we have as many as that we have, without restricting the Second Amendment and choking it to death. I am a huge fan. Well, obviously, I'm a huge fan of the Second Amendment, but mostly because of I'm extremely restrictive on the police, right? So, like Waco is a good, like Waco and the LA riots are good examples on both sides of saying, like, hey, Black people need to protect themselves from the police. Give them guns. They're going to want it. They're going to need it. And then on the other side, Waco was that whole, if you're unaware of what Waco was, it was when the ATF raided a cult.
Oh, yeah.
And burned down that whole building, killed everybody inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that.
So it goes both ways. And so unfortunately, we've come to the part where we're so far deep in gun laws right now where there's no point. If we were to do it one more time, that's an infringement on the Second Amendment. Or if we do it two more times, we basically don't have a Second Amendment anymore. And the Second Amendment is extremely important to keeping you guys safe. Unfortunately, right? So like, Breonna Taylor is a great example. And I love to bring this up. If they didn't have no-knock warrants, she'd still be alive, right? Her boyfriend, they came in and they fired, and her boyfriend fired back. What do you think that he's supposed to do? You can't have a no-knock warrant and go in and expect nobody to shoot at you. This is America. Like, what's going on? And so that kind of protection needs to be had all over the country, right? Because I guarantee you that if they thought that every Black person was armed to the teeth with legal weaponry that they could own, they would not think twice. They're not going in with no-knock warrants. They're not doing that type of thing.
I think someone would respond to that with, look how the Breonna Taylor situation played out, you know? And also the Black Panther Party were armed to the teeth in the 60s, and we also saw how that played out. I don't think more guns is the answer, but I do want to note that when the Second Amendment was put in the Constitution, it was the 18th century or maybe the 19th century, and we have literally weapons of mass destruction right now. Would you at least say that there should be a ban on automatic rifles?
There is a ban on automatic rifles.
Or AR-16s and things like that.
So AR-15s are a semi-automatic rifle. Automatic rifles have been outlawed since the 80s. Like I said before, there are steps that you can take to limit those, but as soon as you do that, you're choke holding the Second Amendment, and it's basically not there anymore. For me, the Second Amendment is there for your personal protection, home defense. I'm a big Castle Doctrine guy, which means as soon as you step foot in my household, you've surrendered your life if you don't have my permission to be there. And I think a lot of people need that in their life, right? So like if somebody barges in your house and goes and tries to rape your wife or, rob you, I think you've surrendered your life. Like, I'm sorry. I think you So I hope that answers that rebuttal to that.
No, that is good. I have a good friend that would love to have this conversation as well. But moving on, what do you think the biggest threat to the union is today?
I think that if we continue to label everybody as one thing, I think that's where we're gonna kind of.
What do you mean by that? Label everybody as one.
So, like in the early 1930s and 40s, it was the Jews are monsters. They're horrible people. You know, they're not people. They're monsters from another world. They don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
If you continue to call somebody a communist or continue to call somebody a fascist, racist, Nazi, but their only stance in life is, oh, I think that we should preserve life and people shouldn't abort them, or that I'm pro-gun, or that I'm pro-universal healthcare, and that's their only stance, and you want to call them like a commie or anything like that. I think that's really dangerous. And that's it others people, right? Oh, black people aren't people. They're 3/5 of a person, right? So they don't deserve rights, right?
Well, according to the Constitution.
Well, for a time, but that's interesting because when people always bring that up, that it wasn't in the Constitution, could you say whatever you wanted under slavery?
I believe. I don't know. I believe so. Why not? Right.
So no, your slave master would kill you if you stepped out of line. Could you own a gun if you were a slave?
No, not at all. No.
No. Did you have the right to privacy as a slave? No.
No.
Did you have the right to a fair trial as a slave? No. Slavery already ticked every single box that it said it was unconstitutional. The only thing that people disagreed on is on whether they were people or not, whether they deserved those rights or not. It wasn't like they didn't know that slavery was wrong, and the founders knew that slavery was wrong. They wrote about it all the time. They just couldn't at the time. People, and people say it all the time. Oh, they could have. They just didn't want to. No,
they also had slaves. So
yeah, a lot of them had slaves at the time.
And it also it would be an easy amendment, right? They could just amend it that black people are 3/5 of men. They could easily just amend that. Why don't they?
No, they got rid of that a long time ago. That was the 3/5 rule. That was.
I would hope so.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yeah, no, that's nothing for.
I will hope so. Last question. Who would you pick to be a Republican presidential nominee for 2024?
I'm a DeSantis man.
DeSantis.
Yeah,
DeSantis? That would be interesting. At least you didn't say Trump.
Well, okay, so this is really complicated and stupid, and I don't like explaining it, but I will explain it. So in terms of like winning and actually being a good candidate, those are two different things. Because you can say you're going to do X, Y, Z, but if you don't actually do it, then you're not a good candidate, but people will believe you anyways. So like, for instance, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer are good examples of that. They're all people that promise you things and do all these things and then go trade on the stock market and make millions of dollars, right? So like, they're doing all these things and not really holding to the standard that they said that they were going to hold themselves to. Trump did that in 2016 very well. I don't think that people were expecting him to do as well. Nobody was expecting him to win. Nobody was expecting him to be an okay president. And in comparatively speaking, he was an okay president. As much as people don't like him, comparatively speaking, if you're talking about like Andrew Jackson or like Andrew Johnson or like Taft or Woodrow Wilson, who, by the way, Woodrow Wilson basically caused World War II. So if you didn't know that, now you do.
I didn't know that, I know who Woodrow Wilson is, but I didn't know that he caused World War II.
Yeah, he shoved Japan in a corner at the Versailles. I think it was the Treaty of Versailles, or maybe I'm thinking it was a treaty before that, and said, "You get nothing for helping us out. Thank you. Goodbye." And
before you know it, Pearl Harbor, right?
Right, and before you know it, Pearl Harbor, or the fact that they sanctioned Germany so hard that they couldn't pay back their debts, and now they're all down in the dumps and ready to believe anybody that's willing to come and step up and tell them that the world hates them and they, need to rise up. And let alone, 10 years later, Hitler comes along and goes, "Oh, I'll help everybody out. I'll be the good guy," and everyone wonders how they did that. I'm like, dude, everybody was eating rats in Germany for so long because we sanctioned them so hard. So so comparatively speaking, Trump was an okay president.
Yeah, compared to Hitler, I guess.
Well, I mean,
I guess.
uh, and but I think DeSantis is a better Trump. He's more politically motivated. He actually has values, and he actually knows how the government works. Trump would just say, "Oh, I'm doing this," or Biden ran on the student debt relief, knowing that he can't do anything as a president. He doesn't have the power of the purse. Congress has that. So saying that we're going to get debt relief passed is such a lie. It's a total lie. That's not his duty to do. But DeSantis would know that and not promise that kind of thing and be a better president than Trump would ever be.
I was kind of surprised because of how unpopular Joe Biden is. I would think that Republicans, and they have Candace Owens, who is extremely popular, I would think that they would start doing a lot of outreach to African American communities, but I've yet to see that. Maybe when you go to work tomorrow, you could pop in there and make some suggestions.
Well, Candace is not well liked by like lefties, and so it's really hard, or black people. So it's really hard to get any sort of outreach from her, and it's tough in general because, and I've seen this like firsthand. You get called like an Uncle Tom like all the time for being a Republican, a black Republican. It's crazy.
I think that was true for a time, but I think that I do sense that things are starting to change a little bit. I'm not a Republican. I don't have many Republican views, but I like diversity, man. I'm all for seeing people cross the line and have a different perspective than me. I don't mind seeing it at all. I just think that the people that are doing it right now are doing it kind of in the wrong fashion. Like Candace Owens, she does say things that are a little bit offensive to black people. Kanye West is a little bit out of his mind, and I know that because he said that. He's told us that he is a little out of his mind. Yeah. So and then what was the guy that was running for Senate? Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker.
That's who we have to. You know what I mean? I think if it was a more, you know what I mean, like a more articulate person that could do
looking for a Larry Elder.
Absolutely. I mean, some of my favorite black people were conservative. One of the most being Malcolm X. Malcolm X had a lot of conservative views. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. As far as less government, I am not a big fan of welfare. I just think that you can't take it away now. It's so ingrained into the system that to rip it away now would do more damage than good. I think that they should have never put it in the first place.
There's a lot of things that it's unfortunate because things like welfare, when you take them away like that, there's a reason why you can't take them away. And unfortunately, like, I'm going to be a little biased here. And unfortunately, it's because of Democrat policies that they've built so ingrained into the system. And we want to, roll back that system. But unfortunately, people lean on it way too, like we've said in the past, people lean on it way too much, and then you can't take it away. As much as I want you guys to be on your own and do all these things, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that, because well, first of all, I didn't want to say it first, but I think that you guys can figure it out, because a lot of the issue with Democrats that Republicans have an issue with is, well, black people can't get an ID to vote. It's racist because they can't figure that out. Are they dumb? I don't think they're dumb. I don't think you're stupid. I don't think that at all. I think that you can figure it out.
There was something with those voting laws, though. I mean, that were kind of, they were a little bit, if I remember correctly, some of those voting laws that they were trying to put in they were like kind of racist. They were.
I'd have to look at them, because I'm sure, right?
It was something that they were doing to kind of try to keep people from being able to vote, because black people tend to vote Democratic, and a lot of Republican states, they were trying to make these votes hard. It was an obvious play to make it harder for some people to vote. It wasn't just that you had to have ID or whatever. It was
well, yeah, there's some other stuff. I'm just talking about the ID part. Yeah, but yeah, there are generally some, well, in areas where they try and keep people from voting. That's just what you're going to see. Some people are going to have it harder than others, and
then too, like, you see a lot of the alternative right guys, a lot of the racist the groups like the Proud Boys, they tend to flock to, you know, right-wing policies and right-wing platforms. They all go over there. There has to be some sort of reason for that. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's so interesting that you'd say that because they now. So I had this conversation earlier with a friend of mine. So I was at the anti-war rally earlier today, and I felt like a dirty hippie from the '70s protesting the Vietnam War, like which was so interesting that I am there now today. I and 50 years earlier, I probably would have been there as a hippie in the '70s, but now I'm considered a conservative. So now you can see how far it went that way. And unfortunately, like that's just how it went for them, right? So like liberals used to be for free speech, but now the free speech as a general rule resides on the right side of the fence. And because we do the free speech thing, all the racists and people that want to express themselves in that way have to go to the free speech aisle. Like that's just how it goes.
That's
But
understandable. I never really looked at it like that, but
I
I
mean,
could see how that
it's
would
just
work.
it's a consequence. Like nobody wants them there, but like the whole thing is just a consequence of the free speech thing. But the liberals on now, as today's standards, more like leftists, don't understand that like the ideas that they perpetuate, like gender ideology or reparations or all that, only come from the freedom of the speech that they have. So it's like a give and take. You know, you can talk about reparations. You
See,
can talk
a lot of Republicans, I hear a lot of conservatives say that, and I've never heard a liberal say we want to take away free speech. What I think I hear them say is that you can say whatever you want, but those things may have consequences, though. No one ever said that you can't say what you want, but those things may have consequences. Like if the masses don't agree with what you're saying, you may get canceled for saying it. Unfortunately, though, for the sake of time, I have to cut this short.
oh damn.
So I will see you on Tuesday.
All right.
That was Harrison Wilkinson at the Archie Tech Experience. As always, I want you guys to love each other, be kind to each other, and take care of each other. Just because someone doesn't share the same views with you does not mean that they are not a human being. We are all in this together. We're just trying to figure this out. Spread love, spread peace and happiness, and have joy in your life. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Pick apart the politicians promoting policies of poverty, invading privacy and piracy, and push apologies, hypocrisies, and possibilities. Pillage a village, provide a prison and a pharmacy. Pulverizing propaganda, play possum package, pandering propaganda, pull out the planet, prepare the pilots for panic. Pretending people without a pot to piss and pissed off the planet, disappearing. Preposterous problems placed in the path of the population, postulation provided with a plan.